So we are starting off with the next session, and you have these two wonderful ladies already prepared for the stage. We will be talking about Brighthouse financial technology transformation. You heard from Lynn in the morning keynotes, so there's more exciting information that Lynn can share with us. Accompanying her on this session is our partner, EY, Irina Codis. She will also contribute, and it's going to be a very interactive session, so feel free to speak up, use the Q&A app as you need. All right? Okay, I hand over the stage to the ladies now.
Are we doing exercise in the beginning, making everybody get up and stretch a little?
Yeah, so everyone stand.
Oh, come on.
You gotta lead with your heart, guys. Lead with your heart here. Excellent. Sure, counts as exercise for today, right?
You can sit down now.
So this is a tough time, late in the afternoon, so thanks for putting up with us with a little exercise. My name is Lynn Dumais. I'm with Brighthouse Financial. Hopefully you heard some of the discussion, a brief introduction into our journey. So today I'm fortunate to present with a very important partner along our journey at Brighthouse. So everything from really setting up the company and the organization and then moving into the infrastructure. So we'll tag team this a little bit. We only have 2 slides, so hopefully that's good news for you. But please ask questions, be interactive, stop us, challenge us. I'm known for telling jokes, and I was advised by some of the Germans at dinner last night not to tell jokes. But I'm going to try one. So do you know how many Germans it takes to change a light bulb? Irina, do you know?
I believe it's 1.
And why is that?
Well, 1, it's because they're very efficient and don't have a sense of humor.
Yes. Did it go over well? Yes? Yes. I'll let you introduce yourself first, too, Irina.
Irina Codes. I have been working with Lynn for the past 5 years on this journey. I lead our EY US SAP practice for financial services, so very happy to be here. Again, please make this interactive. There's going to be a mic going around the audience because, you know, it's 3 o'clock. You guys need to get a little energy up.
All right. So this is a little bit more detail into our journey. So MetLife started in the early 1900s, lots of history, lots of acquisitions over time, a demutualization along the way, and then in the early, actually probably late 15, but it ended up being early 16 that it came to fruition. They said, we want to spin off the life and annuity business in the US because it's just too volatile. And as an organization, we came together and said, we'd like to run this business. So over the next 18 months, it was a process of which entities, which physical business units, because we thought that would facilitate the separation of the business more easily, which are going to go with the new organization. So we were NewCo for quite some time, and then SpinCo, because we ended up choosing Spin as an option, and then finally Brighthouse. So August of 17, so almost 5 years ago exactly, is when we were listed on the New York Stock Exchange and became a public company. So in that 18 months, the necessity was to set up a financial system. So we needed a general ledger, a sub-ledger. My focus was, how do we support the financial systems and the financial reporting? So we were still working under transition service agreements with MetLife. So the most important things for us was, what can we do quickly, easily, a standardized solution, and we knew we did not want to rebuild an IT organization on-prem. So we knew we wanted something in the cloud. And then there was SAP. So when we originally talked to the software vendors and to our implementation partners, we knew we had an extremely aggressive timeline. And that actually weeded out a couple of partners and a couple on the software side and also from an implementation perspective. So ultimately, we chose SAP and chose EY for a few reasons that were really critical, I think, to our success, which was we wanted someone who was proven in the industry. We wanted standards to work from. We didn't want to build customizations. We were coming from a very complex, highly customized environment. We wanted simplicity and transparency. And we wanted someone who was as excited about meeting our timelines as we were. So SAP and EY were those partners. And I can tell you, as we were going through the journey, it was very difficult to tell who was a Brighthouse employee, who was an EY associate, who was Max Attention or SAP. And we also hired, because we were one of the first implementers of S/4HANA, we were hiring consultants who had unique skills in certain specific areas. So it was a learning journey as we went along. And then you'll see when we finally went live, I would tell you that it wasn't perfect. Our original goal was to go live in June. We were late. We didn't think it was good to go live in October. So for anyone who's an accountant, going live in the fourth quarter is never advisable. So we ended up going live on 1/1, but we ran the systems parallel over year end. Someone asked me at dinner last night if I would run parallel again. Would I advise that? Yes, if you can withstand it, I would say. But the interesting thing about it was even though we had to wait for the MetLife systems to feed our system, once it hit SAP, the processing was faster than it was at MetLife. So people had access sooner to the results in SAP when we were running parallel. So it did drive, I'd say, the early adopters to use SAP, certainly not the whole population.
Lynn, if I can just add maybe one example
Sure.
from that in particular. I remember in the consolidations process, as an example, folks were used to, during quarter close, putting topside adjustments into the consolidation system. The fact that they could put it in the GL and we could process through the GAAP results within that 25 minutes later was a huge change for folks, and you're not waiting overnight again. And it was also a mind shift for folks. They were like, whoa. I don't do top sides in the general ledger. We're like, you don't have to do this at the year end, or quarter end. Just put them in the general ledger, they will flow through. So it was an interesting mind shift, especially for the accountants, I think, in the organization as well.
It definitely was. And that not having to wait for a batch processing was awesome. So, because what happens is people just do it offline and then hope that the next day when you see the results, those will actually be the results. So that was just some confidence building. I'd say the other thing I like about SAP is you can put your entry in and say, what does this look like, before you actually process it. So there were a couple little nuances along the way that made the ledger and the processing and just the administration much easier and much better. Before you talk about data, let me just tell you one thing, that originally when I talked at the SAP conference, we had not yet gone live, so we were kind of knee-deep in implementation, and we were in parallel, but we had not experienced, I think, some of the real benefits associated with the system. And I will tell you that the single source of data and that not moving the data from a system to a system to a system has saved us from an audit perspective. It's saved us from a risk management perspective. And it's saved our associates a tremendous amount of time. The other thing that we did, and I referenced kind of some of the numbers this morning, is the standard reports, we had a 90% reduction. But that sounds like a lot, but let me tell you, we ended up at the end of the day with about 10 standard reports. Different time slices, different business units, consolidated and unconsolidated, but we really ended up with just about 10 reports. So we had over 100, we ended up with 10. Maybe we've added a few along the way, but that was the commitment of, if it's good for one person, it's good for everyone, and we're all gonna talk about the data the same way. Our CFO actually wanted to know if he could color code the data to show what came from SAP, so he would know that that was the single source of data. And we had to break it to him that every number came from SAP. So that was certainly beneficial. So it saved on reconciliation, people, and time. At MetLife, we had 3 people that did that as a full-time job. It saved us on audit fees. I would say instead of doing sampling, they actually automatically tested all of the results, so they got more coverage with doing about the same amount of effort. But ultimately, just that not having to reconcile the data and go through the iterations, eliminating topside entries and submitting those through the controls really did make a big difference.
Yeah, so if we can go to the next slide, please. I think you have the clicker. Thank you. We do want to make this interactive, so get ready for your questions. So as Lynn indicated, the S4, or the GL consolidations, implementation, and reporting was really the core. It was what Brighthouse needed in order to stand up its organization, do its external reporting, do its management reporting. But there was another component to the Brighthouse story, right? So they have had over 30 admin systems that were feeding into both the subledger and the general ledger, as well as other business reporting tools. So as Lynn alluded to, the data journey was also part of the organization transformation that Brighthouse was undertaking. So the Reporting Business Center of Excellence, and I'm going to give Lynn all of this credit. I remember the first time we got all of the reporting requirements, I believe it was like 300 and some reports. And she said, okay, to her team, if you want it, you're going to build it, and then we hand it off to the Center of Excellence, because she wanted to make sure her folks understood the actual report that they were requesting versus saying, I want this because I had it before. And I think that was part of that change journey that I know we always talk about, how it's critical that your executive team is supporting and driving the change in the organization. But I think Lynn, and sorry to, I know you don't toot your own horn, but she's been one of the few clients that I've personally had that has been very strong in advocating, if you don't want to change, you have to prove to me why your old way is better. And reporting was just one of the examples. I know we've had many of the conversations with the team members in meetings and one-on-one conversations around different changes that they wanted that were just because the way they used to do it. So the reporting component was really the first part of the data journey. However, Brighthouse looked to build one data model for the life and annuity business. So they investigated more than SAP as part of this, right? SAP was not the default option, but we really dug into what were the requirements, what are the things that Brighthouse needed in order to harmonize their data coming in, be able to have a data model that was able to handle new products in the future, and how do we do this in an agile manner, where the GL implementation, I would say, was more of a waterfall manner. This is an ongoing implementation and project that has been going on at Brighthouse for years as they're onboarding new admin systems or transforming from one admin system to the other. So that data ingestion layer was built using BODs, as well as the CPI, API components of SAP. Then it's being stored right now in the enterprise data store. And that is the universal truth for both businesses events and sometimes accounting events, because
Yeah.
some admin systems are behind. But that is the single source of truth. And as new products are being onboarded, or as they're getting off their TSA contracts, we are processing everything through the SAP environment and that data layer. So we really wanted to make sure this was interactive. I think we got through 10 minutes. There is a mic.
We have actually 15 minutes.
We have 15.
10 minutes is if you want to continue
Okay.
sharing information, or we can start the questions, whichever you
I mean, I think everybody's like death by PowerPoint after today.
So who's ready to call out the first question? Otherwise, I will take it.
Oh, come on.
Okay, we've got 3 questions here. Maybe I will kick off the Q&A for you. And yeah, let's see more participation from everybody here. So there's an interesting ask. What's your view around central finance? Have you had a chance to look at the business process and use cases around central finance?
So I think, and Lynn, you can add on. I think in the Brighthouse's ecosystem at this point, central finance is not something that they would be looking at, because one, they're a US-only based company. Their subsidiaries are not in multiple countries, right? They're only GAAP and STAT or LDTI and STAT. I think if you were to look at another acquisition, or if that would be something that Brighthouse would look at from, I think, an ecosystem, and it would be a pretty easy plug and play from that perspective.
Fantastic. Let me ask the second question, because I don't hear any voice. So
I'm going to start calling people out by name.
no, it's also because we told
Wait,
them to
I see
use
a
that.
hand. I see a hand.
All right, pass the mic, please.
I peer pressure people into it. Just, you know.
I'll be brave. Hey, Lynn, so quite a journey of 5 years. What was the biggest surprise for you over that 5-year journey?
Oh, I would say surprise. The thing that disappointed me, that I missed, right? The blind spot that I had was change management. I have to tell you, maybe no one buys change management. If you're a customer here, you're like, I can do it. We got this. I said, give me a communication plan, and I got it. I think that the people's inability to get out of their own mindset and think differently and look at and just adopt this. They were like, I used to get this report in my email. I'm like, all you have to do is click this box. That's it. And they were like, yeah, but I got it in my email before, right? And it was like, can you just click this box? That's all it is. And they were like, I don't want to install that on my computer. That was like, there's no install, right? So it was that struggle to get people to change. And that was where I really, if I had to do anything differently, like surprised me, was how much people would not change, even if. There were the 20% that were inspired right away, right? They were that, and I thought if we get these early adopters, they're going to bring everyone along with them, and it was not true. But
In summary, you're always disappointed by surprises.
yeah,
Got it.
That's a good one. All right, the extension to that question would be, in the initial stages of building your new finance function, what were some of the biggest challenges you had? Because I'm sure you went through a significant amount of planning time to do that, right? So what is it that, what was it like? What kind of challenges? Was it stakeholder management? Was it technical knowledge, resources? What did you have to deal with?
I would say the biggest challenge was we had an immovable deadline. We knew at the separation, because it was financial data and we were both public companies, we were going to need to ensure that we had completely separate operating systems. So I think the timeline, everything was compressed. Every minute you spent on planning, you consumed getting execution done. So we approached it, I think Irina was kind calling it a waterfall, but it was stand it up, stabilize it, and then optimize it. So I'd say we're really in the optimization stage now. But it was good enough at a certain point, and people struggled with that. This isn't exactly what I wanted, but that was, I'd say that was the biggest challenge. And navigating through what the minimum viable standard was, and some people believed they needed something that may not have been able to be delivered in the first round. So I'd say that time and money is always for us it was time. So.
Good. And I have a question, kind of connected to that, because we always talk about war for talent. That means you will never have enough resources to do anything that you plan to do. So how did you come across that? Because I believe you are going into SAP technology, and I'm going to make an assumption that there was not an exhaustive pool of resources that you could tap on. So how did you approach that?
Crisis management. Like, we didn't know we needed basis people, like we found that out. We had never operated in a cloud environment, and how long it took to stand up and get access and connectivity to our environment was a surprise and a challenge.
Lynn, if I can just add maybe a little more color. At the same time they were doing this, they were also standing up the Wi-Fi in the office.
Yes.
So it was, so the cloud technology is even harder because of that.
Yeah. So yeah, and it was, yes, we were building. Everything needed to be separated. So as much as we had history and some equity behind the organization, we also were starting everything from leases and copy machines, and people don't use copy machines anymore. So people in printers and all the access. Question?
There's a hand.
You can. Are you loud?
I will give you this. Yeah.
It's more on the technology side. So I know that you started your implementation, around 2018? Mm-hmm. So which SAP platform did you use to actually deliver S/4HANA?
It was 1609 was the
So
version.
This would have been the on-prem version of
Yeah,
S/4?
well, no, so it was on HEC at that point, and then Brighthouse has moved on to Azure in the last couple of years.
So is that under RISE, or is that?
At this point, no. But I think if Brighthouse were to choose their implementation, I think the next one would be definitely RISE. And I'm just being presumptuous for...
All right, yeah.
based on the conversations I've had with Brighthouse.
Yeah.
Okay, there is one more question that we would like to ask you as a partner of SAP,
Sure.
right? How did you prepare yourself as an organization in terms of supporting Brighthouse when this project came about?
Sure. I think for us, the number one thing, and this is something that we do with all of our clients, but I think Brighthouse has been the most open about it, is if there's a problem, we talk about it. Mm-hmm. And it's not just my problem or Lynn's problem or the technology team's problem, right? It is a conversation that we have that's been honest and transparent. So when Lynn said, people couldn't tell whether you were EY or Brighthouse or SAP as part of the project. Fun fact, I got a wrestling belt at the end of the project from Lynn.
Yeah.
I have an SAP wrestling belt. And I was walking down the hallway with this thing on my shoulder, and somebody said, oh, are you going back to your full-time job? And I'm like, I work for EY. And I've been working next to this person for about, a year at least. So I think number one is having those open and transparent conversations. And there is going to be conflict, right? If you don't think there's going to be conflict with your SI or your team, it's just not possible. But I think it has to be healthy conflict where you have those crucial conversations with your partners and you're able to discuss it. I think that that's been the most critical point for us as an organization is we tell our team members from staff that are just out of college to all the way up to our senior partners that this is an open and transparent relationship that we need to have with our clients.
Fantastic.
Yeah, I think the nice part was, whether it was EY, SAP, there were lots of people that could have stood on the shore and kind of pointed at what was going wrong. And they didn't do, some people did, but for the most part, everybody was like getting into the water and fixing the problem. It was less about how did the problem get there, and it was about what can we do to fix it. And like Irina said, I think you're bound to have conflicts, and we had, I think, more EY people at one point than Brighthouse employees. So I will say the nice thing about consultants is if they're not working out, you just say, hey, they're not working out. Can we get a new one? Let's try a new one. So there were a few of those, but I think, overall it was, you have to be a team. You have to be aligned where you're going. And there are some brave souls that come in my office and say, we were wrong. And don't be so invested in what you did that you're not willing to change, correct it, revert. Because we did some things wrong. We built something that didn't work. So throwing that away is tough, but it was the best answer in some cases. And it's hard as an advisor to deliver that message. So I think that was it's healthy. I won't say I loved it, but I do think it's a healthy way to operate.
Good. I have another connected question. Yes, we're talking about finance at the moment, but we all know that finance is the downstream system. So you have a ton of upstream activities which flushes the data into your downstream system. So you need this balancing act of stakeholder management for non-finance system along with your project scope. So what were some of the lessons learned in that balancing act that you can share with our audience today?
I was going to say, Irina, you should definitely do that because you negotiated those data definitions quite a bit.
Yeah, I think it is about having that conversation with folks. And I will say this was much easier in person than doing this remotely, right? So we just went live with a different organization in January, and having folks agree on that common data dictionary and understanding what their common product lines are, what that rolls up to from a stat and gap perspective, what that rolls into a management reporting perspective. Actuarial thinks it's completely different, right? And I think it's having that, the ability to do that in the system and show and be able to adjust. Because I will tell you, right, the first time we did the master data for enterprise, it's not perfect, right? This is an agile project, and if we needed to update and split things up or rename them appropriately, we do, right? So it's coming to a common goal, knowing it's not going to be perfect, but then iterating through it, I would say, is the key to that.
I think it's just kind of understating the fact that we have a common data structure across our entire organization, not just finance. We were the beginning, but it's much broader than that from a client's solutions perspective, from a distribution perspective, from an administrative service perspective. We have a data definition set and a data structure that operates through all of our platforms. If we didn't have that, I don't think we could be as effective as we are operating in this environment.
Fantastic. Last question. What's your strategy for your ongoing maintenance? There's these multiple options. You grow your in-house team, you continue with your partner, you bring in a center of excellence with a combination of these resources. What do you see seems to work well for you from a Brighthouse perspective?
Oh, you're going to have to answer that. I don't do the
From a SAP maintenance perspective, from a broader organization?
From a broader organization perspective.
So I think Brighthouse has been very public about this, right? So if it's not something that they are not experts in, or they're not adding value in, it's something that they are looking for a third-party provider to help them with, right? Whether that be admin system administration, whether that be SAP AMS support. I think that's been Brighthouse's strategy from day one, right? What's the core of the business? That stays with the business. For everything else, create an ecosystem of vendors that you're going to be working with. And for the vendor folks in this room that are not client, right, the key is also to have those relationships with the other vendors that are within that client, right? So we, on a quarterly basis, have meetings with the IBMs, the other organizations that are part of the ecosystem for Brighthouse. And, again, sometimes difficult conversations, but ones that you need to, at the end of the day, the client is number one, right? And being client-centric is really what we all need to be.
Great. Any other questions from the audience?
Chris,
Yeah.
see, I know a name.
It's just so the people online.
So you're recorded. For posterity?
Yeah, so this is for Irina. Again, knowing the size of Brighthouse, the complexity of, this program that was executed upon, just curious, like, rough size of your team that was leveraged. And was your team flexed up and down throughout the project and at different milestones and how that all played out?
At the maximum, I would say we were a little over 300 people.
Yeah.
However, that's an EY organization. Remember, that is not just for finance. It was for setting up the Wi-Fi, getting the computers together. I always
It was
cleaning the toilets.
Yeah.
The whole organization stand up. Because in the beginning, as Lynn said, it was crisis management. For the SAP implementation, I think we were really in the U.S. maybe 20-some between Tampa, New Jersey, and Charlotte mostly. The reporting team flexed depending on demand. And then we had an offshore team of probably another 20 to 30 there.
I think that's all supplemented by some project management folks too.
Yes.
So the project management was kind of another group. We have a group that does project management, but it's probably half EY supplemented, because to the extent we don't expect to keep doing projects at this rate, we didn't want to onboard people. So we've been supplementing with EY on project management.
And Chris, part of that honest conversation, right, is on a quarterly basis, we sit down with Brighthouse and discuss what are the needs for them as an organization, short-term and long-term, and how do we become cost-efficient for them, depending on what their needs are and what that demand is. That demand management has been critical on all of our SAP projects, right? And that piece really needs to be industrialized in order to do it right.
Great. Okay, please go ahead.
I hope I didn't scare everybody with the 300 people, but we
Yes.
really...
One last question. And we'll be taking the rest of the question through the app.
We had great
please.
happy hours, too, so,
Hi, Irina. My name is Rajesh. So my question is, we have been talking about what we were doing until now. So what's the plan for future?
For Brighthouse,
Yes,
for
yes,
EY?
from the perspective of...
EY, it's easy,
yes.
being #1 financial
Yeah.
services SAP implementer.
Even I'm from EY, by the way. I'm from EY.
No, so I think for Brighthouse, right, one of the things that we just talked about is having that quarterly understanding of what their demand is. As we're finishing up some of this data work, we're transitioning that data work to full-time employees, or we're transitioning it to an offshore team, depending on what the need of that is. But it's really now, is there a demand from a project standpoint? Is there going to be demand from a project standpoint 6 months from now? And planning for that ebbs and flows is key to that. So, I think right now, from an S4 perspective, LDTI is the #1 thing
Right,
that every life and annuity company is working on. So that's been the project, right, and the demand generation there.
Yeah, I think it's optimized, right? We've put in place the right infrastructure. Now it's how can we leverage tools to do better things and other, so expand their usage. And then how do we optimize kind of the data usage or the cloud? And, so that's where we are. I think it's kind of deal with the regulatory issues and optimize what we have. And be able to bring some products to market. That's where all the capacity will be used, so.
Fantastic. We are over the time. Ladies, thank you very much, Lynn and Igor. It was fantastic conversation.
Thank you, guys.